Hey, this is Hansen with Team Discmania. I'm here to show you what I've got in my bag for 2022. Let's check it out. All right, so first of all, I'm putting with P2s. These are the new Discmania molded P2s, max weight, Team Discmania stamped. I switched to the P2 last year and it's just felt super comfortable for me and for my putting style. Next up, I've got this Luxe Link. This is a relatively new addition to my bag. It's a nice straight to flip up putter and I'm really liking this Luxe plastic. It's a little bit more stable and gonna beat in less quickly than my other links that I use as a throwing putter. And here I've got my soft tactic. It's pretty beat up, as you can probably see. It's very puddle topped. This is one that I use for a lot of my forehand upshots. It's, you know, pretty beat in, but it's still stable as a tactic should be, and super comfortable in my hand and pretty reliable for me, even though it's pretty beat up. Next up, I've got a Colton Montgomery Arctic Fang. This is a Exo Hard Link. This is another one that I use as a throwing putter. It's also getting a little bit beat up, but for me, out of the bag, it's a straight sort of a flip up if I throw it flat. It'll go a little bit of hyzer if I give it a lot of hyzer off my release, but it's mostly just a nice, straight, reliable throwing putter for me. Next up, we've got a Logic. This is Exo Soft Logic. I really like the profile of this as a throwing putter. This is a little bit more stable for me than both of the links that I throw. It'll sort of hyzer flip and then finish more hyzer, whereas the links will kind of hyzer flip and finish straight or a little right. So this is a super consistent throwing putter for me. And then I've got this Active Premium Sensei. This one I really love for throwing hyzers. It feels really good out of the hand. It holds that hyzer line, but it has a lot of glide. So it's just gonna keep going. It goes really far for me, super consistent. I love throwing this disc. My last throwing putter, this is a Razor Claw 2. This one is the more overstable cousin of the tactic, and I use this for more overstable approach shots if I'm trying to throw a little bit of a flex or really give a full forehand rip. And sometimes I'll throw this for a little backhand flex shot, or especially a backhand into a strong headwind. So first mid-range I have, which is kind of like in the approach disc putter mid-range area, is a Mutant. This is a super overstable mid-range. It's probably more overstable than anything you've ever thrown. Definitely more overstable than anything I've ever thrown. I use this kind of for get out of jail shots, sort of just if I need to throw some weird, really flex line, and I'll throw this also for like hyzers that I just want to dig and sit right where it lands. Next up, I've got the Iron Samurai 3. So this is a Color Glow MD3. This is just a little touch more stable than the regular MD3 that I throw. So it's a little bit flatter, and I just really like this. It holds up a little stronger in a headwind, and it feels really good in the hand. So this is a good complement for me to my MD3. This is the MD3. It's also max weight, throwing a lot of max weight stuff. This is a little more overstable than maybe some of the Innova produced MD3s, but I really like how it flies. You can throw it really hard and it'll go straight and then finish left for a backhand. Super consistent disc, really fun to throw. Next up, we got probably one of my favorite mid-ranges. This is the MD1. I really love how this feels in my hand. It's got a nice curved rim and it just goes straight. It tries its hardest not to fade and not to turn too much. So this is really fun. And you can also throw it on, well, I like to throw it on a lot of hyzer sometimes, and it just has a little bit more glide than say an MD3, and it'll stay up and keep curving for a while. And also throw it on anhyzer too as well. It pretty much holds whatever line you want to put it on. All right, I've got this Kyle Klein Midnight Prowl, which is a Meta Origin. This one is a little newer than the other Origin I throw, so it's a little less beat up. I like to throw this in the woods a lot for hyzer flip up shots with a little bit of turn still. It's super consistent for me. I know that I can release it on hyzer, which is my most comfortable release, and it's gonna go straight and maybe finish right a little bit, but this is also fun for throwing on hyzer. If you put a lot of hyzer on it, it's gonna glide left and stay in the air for a really long time. And then my last mid-range, this is a pretty beat up Origin. This thing is super flippy, so even if I release it on a lot of hyzer, it's gonna flip over and go right. So I like to use this for right turning shots, and yeah, I use this for a lot of scramble shots, for backhands too, for step out shots like stepping out of the woods, and patent pending kind of things, just when I need something that's gonna glide a long way with not as much power. All right, so we're gonna go from least stable to most stable fairway drivers. So starting with this is the Zen, the Nate Perkins Meta Essence. I love throwing the Essence, and it's also a really good disc for beginners. For me, I like to throw it on hyzer for a little flip up. I also like to throw it sort of flat and just let it fade right. It's really great for sort of downhill shots or just shots where you just want it to go really far. I personally, and I know a lot of people, get pretty much very close to distance driver distance on this disc, which is only an 8-speed. So I love throwing this disc, and I would recommend it to anyone. Next up, I have this sweet Instinct. This was my first custom stamp ever, so that's pretty cool. It's a good memory to have in my bag. This is a nice straight fairway driver. This one's pretty beat in, so it's also a hyzer flip disc. It's a little bit more stable than my Essence, but it's also a really good disc. I know I can throw it on hyzer and it'll flip up and just go straight. It's really great for throwing in the woods. All right, this is probably my most thrown fairway driver, or close to at least. This is a Discmania produced FD. It's a little domey, but I really like how it flies. It's just a good hyzer flip rip disc. I release it mostly on hyzer. It's great for the woods. It's great for just throwing straight at things. It really doesn't have very much fade at all, so I love to throw it just straight at something at the pin and it'll go there, so it's a good one. All right, this is probably my second most thrown fairway driver. This is a Color Glow FD3. I love throwing this disc. I throw it for forehands a lot, but I also throw it for backhands as well. It's very consistent. I can throw it on a touch of hyzer and it will hold a really straight line and then still finish left. But I know that it's still gonna stand up in the wind. It'll hold up to a headwind. It will go really far in a tailwind. It's just a super trustworthy disc that I really love throwing. All right, this is also an FD3. This one is much more stable than that Color Glow one that I like to throw. So this one I will use for a lot of hyzer shots. If I want to throw like a skip shot, this is a disc I like to use if I'm trying to go really far left for a backhand or far right for a forehand. I throw a lot of spike hyzers with this if I need to throw a spike hyzer. It's just a super nice feeling, consistent disc that does what I want it to do. All right, last fairway driver, definitely the most overstable. This is a Splice. This is a prototype Splice. Super overstable, super beefy. I like throwing this disc on flex forehand or backhand lines. And I also really love throwing this over things. If I'm at a course that has kind of short trees, lines in the sky, I will love to throw this one. Just throw it on some Annie over the top and let it fade back to the basket. It's super fun to throw. It's kind of wild, but it's a great disc to have in the bag. Also a really great disc for scrambling if I need to. right, let's talk about the last category, my distance drivers. First of all, I have this Echo DD3. This is a disc I pretty much exclusively use for rollers. It's super flippy. It just wants to turn over, but it also will keep going and roll a very long way if I want it to. So it's a really good utility tool to have in my bag. Next up, I've got this Enigma. It's like a sneaky good tool in my bag. I kind of sometimes forget to throw it, but when I do, it's always really like a great shot. For me, it's a little bit of a hyzer flip disc, and it'll always get a little bit of drift, but it's always gonna finish well to the left. For a backhand, it's also a really good disc for me forehand. I don't have quite as much forehand power, so it's nice to have something that's gonna have a little bit of natural turn. Super consistent disc, love throwing this. It bombs, it's a great disc. All right, next up, I've got probably my biggest distance disc. This is a Cloudbreaker 3. It is a max weight, yellow, not super domey, but it has a little bit of dome to it. I've been throwing this for hyzer flips. It's just gonna go for days. I can put it on a little bit of ante if I put it high enough and let it just kind of pan out. It goes really, really far, and I really love throwing it. It's very fun. Next up, I've got this Team Discmania DD3. Got a lot of DD3s in the bag. This one's also max weight. This one is a little more stable than the Cloudbreaker. It's also a little bit pop-toppy, but it's a good one for hyzer flips. If I release it on a lot of hyzer, and it'll flip up and just carry a really long way. I also like throwing this one when there's water around. This is one of the DD3s I care a little less about, so I won't be too sad if I lose this one, but it's also a very good disc. All right, next up, this has been my most reliable DD3. This is a Proto DD3. I got this last year, max weight. It bombs. It's just a really good disc. I can put it on ante and let it just kind of fade out. It's super consistent in that way. I know that when I release it correctly, it's just gonna do exactly what I want it to. It's beaten in a little bit, but as you can see, I've thrown this so many times in the past year, and it's still in really good shape. So this new C-Line plastic is no joke. It's good. And this is the newest addition to my bag. This is also a Proto DD3, but only been thrown a couple times. It's a little more stable than that other one. Holds up a little bit more in a headwind. Just, you know, basically the same as the other one, a touch more stable, which is nice to have if I'm throwing into a headwind and I just want to make sure that I'm gonna get that hyzer finish. Then I have this PD. This one's pretty beat up. It's a pretty flat top. I throw this for forehands a lot. It just feels really good in the hand for forehands. It's honestly a pretty beat up PD2. It might actually be less stable than that last DD3, but it's really a solid disc for me in wind. For forehands, I can get it probably further than any of my other discs for forehand, and it just feels really good in the hand. I think I just like the kind of a flat top for forehands, and this does the trick. Last disc I have is also a PD2. It's a lot domier. Got the San Francisco Safari stamp, and this one's just a little bit more overstable than that other one that I use for forehand. So I throw forehands with this, I'll throw backhands just when I need something that's really gonna stand up in the headwind and just, you know, not flip over. So this is a really solid disc for that. Super beefy, yeah, it's a great disc. Thank you for checking out what I've got in my bag for 2022. I'm Ella Hansen. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you out there. Thanks.